The billionaire froze mid-sentence, his glass of wine hovering just inches from his lips, as the little boy beside the table suddenly screamed and collapsed to the floor. Every conversation in the restaurant died instantly. Chairs scraped. Forks paused midair. And the woman sitting across from him, Eva Brown, didn't scream. She just whispered, trembling. "Lucas, no, not again." Peter Graham slowly stood up, his expression unreadable, eyes locked on the boy convulsing on the polished floor, and in that moment, something shifted inside him, something no one in that room could have predicted. Because what he was about to do next would change all of their lives forever. Before we go any further, I need you to do something real quick. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels, and stay with me till the very end, because this isn't just a story, it's one of those moments you don't forget. It started 3 months earlier. Not in a restaurant, not with chaos, but with a message Eva hadn't even planned to reply. She sat on her small couch that night in her 2-bedroom apartment in Kentucky, Lucas asleep in the next room, his breathing uneven as always, a sound she had learned to monitor even in her dreams, her phone lighting up with a notification from a man whose profile didn't match anything she trusted. Peter Graham, no flashy bio, no desperate energy, just one line. "Hi Eva, I read your comment under that post, and I think you're stronger than you know." She stared at it longer than she should have. Because strength wasn't something she felt anymore. Not after losing her husband 2 years ago, not after hospital bills stacked higher than her hope, not after watching her son struggle with a condition no doctor had been able to fully explain, let alone fix. Lucas Brown, 8 years old, bright eyes, quiet smile, and a body that sometimes refused to cooperate, muscles locking without warning. Seizures hitting like lightning with no forecast. She had learned to survive, not to trust, but something about that message felt different. She replied. Short, careful. "Thank you." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't, because Peter replied again. And again. And somehow, over weeks, conversations that started as polite exchanges became something steady. He never asked for anything, never pushed, never crossed lines, just listened. And Eva found herself talking more than she had in years, about Lucas. About the nights she stayed awake watching him breathe, about the fear that never really left her chest. What she didn't know was who Peter really was. Peter Graham didn't usually sit in silence. Men like him weren't built that way. At 42, he had built an empire across healthcare technology, investments, and private medical research facilities, his name appearing in circles where decisions shaped entire industries. But none of that mattered in the quiet moments he spent reading Eva's messages at night. Because for the first time in years something felt real, he didn't tell her who he was. Not because he wanted to deceive her, but because he wanted to be seen without the weight of his name. Still, there were moments he almost told her. Like the night she said she couldn't afford Lucas's next evaluation, or the morning she sent a picture of Lucas smiling, even after a rough episode, with the caption, "He's still fighting." Peter stared at that photo longer than he realized. Something about that boy felt familiar, not in memory, but in feeling. Like a question he hadn't answered yet. They met in person for the first time 2 weeks later, a quiet coffee shop, neutral ground. Eva arrived first, adjusting her jacket nervously, Lucas beside her, sitting calmly but observant, his small hands gripping the edge of the table like he always did when he was in unfamiliar places. Peter walked in 5 minutes later, no security, no announcement. Just a man in a simple shirt and calm posture. Eva looked up, and for a second, she froze. Because he didn't look like the kind of man who messages strangers online. There was something composed about him, controlled, but not cold. "Eva," he asked gently. She nodded. "That's me." His eyes moved to Lucas. And this must be Lucas. Lucas didn't speak. He just nodded slightly, watching, always watching. They talked. At first, it was surface level, polite, cautious, but slowly, the conversation deepened, stories overlapping, silences becoming comfortable instead of awkward. Peter listened more than he spoke. Eva noticed that men didn't usually listen like that. Not anymore. Over the next few weeks, they met a few more times. Always simple places, always with Lucas. Peter never complained. Never suggested otherwise, and that alone made Eva trust him more than she expected. Still, something didn't add up. There were moments, small ones. The way he carried himself, the way people subtly reacted around him. The way his phone buzzed with messages he ignored without even looking. He wasn't ordinary, and Eva knew it, but she didn't ask. Because she was afraid of the answer. Then came the night everything changed, the date, a real one, dinner. Somewhere nicer than usual. Peter had suggested it carefully, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. And Eva hesitated before agreeing, but Lucas insisted. "I want to go," he said softly. So they did. The restaurant was quiet, elegant. The kind of place Eva had only seen from the outside before. Her hand tightening slightly around Lucas's as they walked in. Her eyes scanning the room like she didn't belong there. Peter was already seated, waiting. He stood as they approached, smiled. "You look amazing," he said. Eva gave a small, nervous laugh. "Thank you, this place is a lot." "You deserve more than this place," he replied calmly. Lucas sat beside her. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Because halfway through the meal, Lucas's hand slipped from the table. His body stiffened, and then he collapsed. Back to the present. The restaurant still silent. Eva on her knees now, trying to steady her son, her hands shaking but practiced. Whispering to him like she had done so many times before. "It's okay. I'm here. I'm here." Peter stood over them, watching carefully. Calculating. Not panicking. And that was the first thing that caught Eva's attention. Because most people panicked, but Peter didn't. Instead, he slowly crouched down beside Lucas. Eyes focused, sharp, like he was seeing something no one else could. "Eva," he said quietly. "Has anyone ever told you exactly what this is?" She shook her head, tears forming. "No," they said, "it's rare, complicated, they don't know." Peter's jaw tightened slightly. And then he said something that made Eva's heart stop. "I think I do." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. And before Eva could even respond, Peter reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made one call, just one, his voice calm, controlled. "I need a team. Now." He paused, listening. Then added, "And prepare the lab." Eva blinked, confused. What lab?" Peter looked at her. And for the first time since they met, the mask was gone. "I didn't tell you who I really am," he said. "And after tonight, everything changes. I didn't tell you who I really am." The words hung in the air between them, heavy, unreal. As the faint sound of Lucas's breathing slowly steadied against Eva's trembling hands, and for a moment, she couldn't tell if the room was spinning or if her world had just shifted without warning. Peter didn't raise his voice. Didn't rush. But everything about him had changed. The calm man she had been talking to for weeks was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely, focused, decisive. Powerful in a way that didn't need to be announced. "I run a private medical research network," he continued. His tone steady, eyes still on Lucas. "Neurological disorders. Rare conditions, cases most hospitals don't have the resources to fully investigate." Eva blinked, trying to process. "You're saying you can help him?" Peter didn't answer immediately. And that silence said everything. "I'm saying," he replied carefully, "I've seen something like this before, but not exactly this." Not exactly. Those two words tightened something in Eva's chest. Because hope was dangerous. And she had learned that the hard way. Within 15 minutes, the restaurant was no longer just a restaurant. People didn't notice when the black SUVs arrived outside. They didn't notice the quiet coordination. But Eva did. Because suddenly, the world around her felt organized. Controlled. A stretcher came in, not rushed, not chaotic, handled by professionals who didn't waste movement, their presence calm but efficient as they assessed Lucas without overwhelming him. "Vitals stable," one of them said. "Good," Peter replied. Eva looked at him sharply. "You planned this?" "I prepare for possibilities," he said simply. That answer both comforted and unsettled her. Lucas was conscious again by the time they reached the facility. He was quiet, too quiet. His small fingers curled slightly as he looked up at the ceiling lights passing above him. His breathing shallow but steady. And Eva walked beside him the entire time, refusing to let go of his hand. Even for a second. "Mom," he whispered weakly. "I'm here, baby," she said quickly, brushing his hair back. "Am I okay?" Her throat tightened. "Yes," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "You're okay." Peter walked just ahead of them. Silent, thinking. Because what he had seen back in that restaurant didn't sit right. Not the seizure, not the muscle lock, but the pattern. The facility didn't look like a hospital. And that alone made Eva uneasy. It was quieter, cleaner, almost too perfect. Glass walls, soft lighting. People who moved with purpose but without noise. "Where are we?" she asked under her breath. Peter glanced back. "My primary research center." Her steps slowed. "Research?" "Yes." That word echoed differently now. Research didn't guarantee answers. Sometimes it meant experiments. And that thought terrified her. Lucas was taken into a diagnostic room, not separated. Never alone, Peter made that clear. Eva stayed beside him as machines she didn't recognize began scanning. Mapping, analyzing, quiet hums filling the space as data streamed across large screens. Numbers and patterns she couldn't understand, but Peter clearly could. Because he wasn't just watching, he was reading, interpreting. His eyes moving with precision as if every flicker on that screen told a story. "What are you seeing?" Eva asked, her voice low. Peter didn't respond immediately. And that pause felt longer than it was. "Something unusual," he said finally. Her heart dropped. "Unusual how?" He exhaled slowly. "This isn't just a neurological disorder." The room went still. "Then what is it?" she asked, her voice barely holding. Peter stepped closer to the screen, zoomed in, highlighted a pattern. "These signals," he said, "they're not random, they're consistent, repeating at intervals too precise to be natural." Eva shook her head. "I don't understand." Peter turned to her, and what he said next made her blood run cold. "Someone has been interfering with his nervous system." Silence, heavy, unbelievable. "What are you saying?" Eva whispered. Peter didn't soften it. "I'm saying this doesn't look accidental." Her body stiffened. No, that doesn't make sense. He's been like this for years, since he was a child." "Exactly," Peter said. And that word hit harder than anything else. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a condition, it was a question, a dangerous one. Lucas shifted slightly on the bed. "Mom," he murmured. Eva rushed to him instantly. "I'm here, baby." "Can we go home?" he asked softly, her heart shattered. But before she could answer, Peter stepped forward. "Lucas," he said gently. The boy looked at him. "You're very strong, do you know that?" Lucas gave a faint nod. Peter smiled slightly. "I need you to help me understand something, can you do that?" Another nod. "Good," Peter said. "Has anyone ever given you medicine, or injections, that made you feel different afterward?" Lucas hesitated, his small brows furrowed. Thinking, then slowly, he nodded. Eva froze. "What?" she said sharply. "When?" Peter asked calmly. Lucas swallowed. Sometimes, after we go to the clinic, they give me something, and then it hurts more later. Eva stepped back slightly. No, no, that's normal. Treatments can. Eva, Peter interrupted gently. But firmly, that's not normal. The room shifted again. This time, darker. More serious. Because now there was something else in the air. Not confusion, not fear, but suspicion. Peter turned to his team. I want every medical record Lucas has ever had, he said. Every prescription, every clinic visit, every name attached to his case. One of them nodded immediately. Already pulling it up. Good, Peter replied. Then he added something. That changed everything. And flag any connection to external research funding. Eva looked at him sharply. What does that mean? Peter didn't look away from the screen. It means, he said slowly, if someone has been using your son as part of an unapproved study. He paused. Then finished, I'm going to find them. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Eva couldn't tell anymore. Time felt distorted. All she knew was that her world, the one she had painfully held together for years, was now unraveling in ways she couldn't control. Peter finally stepped away from the monitors. His expression, different, tighter. Controlled anger beneath the surface. What is it? Eva asked immediately. He looked at her. And this time he didn't hold back. There's a company, he said. Small on paper, but heavily funded behind the scenes. Her heart pounded. And Peter's jaw clenched. And Lucas's name is in their internal files. The air left her lungs. What company? Peter hesitated for just a second. Then said the name. And the moment he did, Eva's entire body went cold. Because she recognized it, not from documents. Not from emails, but from somewhere far more personal. Her voice trembled. That's the clinic my husband trusted before he died. Peter's eyes darkened. And in that moment, the truth began to take shape, something bigger, something darker, something that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Peter stepped closer to her, lowered his voice. This wasn't random, he said. They've been studying him. Eva shook her head, tears falling freely now. No, my husband would never. He may not have known, Peter said quickly. But someone did. The room fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't just silence, it was the kind that comes before a storm. Peter turned back to his team. I want legal on standby, he said. And prepare to lock this facility down. Eva looked at him, fear rising. Locked down. Peter met her eyes, and what she saw there wasn't just determination, it was war. Because the moment they realize we've found this, he said quietly. They're not going to let it go easily. And as if on cue, the lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Everyone in the room froze. One of the technicians looked up sharply. Sir. Peter didn't move. What is it? The technician swallowed. We just got an external access attempt. Then, they're trying to breach the system. Eva's heart stopped. Peter's expression hardened completely. And then he said one sentence. That made it clear this was no longer just about saving a child. Shut everything down. He turned to Eva, voice low, controlled, urgent. This just became something much bigger. Shut everything down. The words hit the room like a switch being flipped, and within seconds. The calm precision of the facility turned into controlled urgency, screens going dark one by one. Systems locking, doors sealing quietly as Peter stepped closer to Eva. His voice low but firm. They know we found it, he said. Eva's chest tightened as she looked at Lucas lying on the bed. Small. Fragile. Unaware of the storm forming around him. Are we safe? She asked. Peter didn't lie. Right now, yes. But his eyes said something else, not for long. The facility went into isolation mode, no external access. No incoming signals, no outgoing data. Everything contained. But Peter knew one thing for sure. If they were trying to get in, it meant the truth they had uncovered was bigger than he initially thought. And more dangerous. He turned back to the main console, manually pulling up the files before the system fully locked down. Scanning through layers of encrypted data his team had managed to extract. His jaw tightening with every second. Eva watched him. Waiting. Afraid to ask, because deep down she already knew. "Peter," she said softly. He didn't respond immediately. Then finally, he spoke. They weren't just studying him. The room felt colder. They were testing neurological response patterns, using long-term exposure. Eva's legs nearly gave out. "Testing," she whispered. Peter looked at her. And this time there was no softening it. They used controlled injections to trigger neural reactions, then monitored how his body adapted over time. Her hands flew to her mouth. No, that's not possible." Peter's voice dropped. "It is, and they've been doing it for years." Eva collapsed into the chair beside Lucas. Tears streaming down her face as she held his hand tightly. Her mind racing through every hospital visit, every treatment. Every moment she trusted the system that was supposed to help her son. "They used him," she whispered. Peter didn't interrupt. Because there was nothing to interrupt. That realization needed space. Lucas stirred slightly. "Mom." She leaned in instantly. "I'm here, baby." "Why are you crying?" he asked weakly. Her heart broke all over again. "I'm not. I'm okay." Peter stepped closer, crouching beside the bed again. His voice calm but carrying a quiet authority. "Lucas," he said gently, "we're going to fix this, okay?" The boy looked at him, not afraid, just tired. "Will it hurt?" he asked. That question hit harder than anything else. Peter paused, just for a second. Then he answered honestly. "Not like before." Lucas nodded slightly. And for reasons Eva couldn't explain, he believed him. Peter stood up slowly, and in that moment his decision was made. He turned to his team. "I want a full reversal protocol," he said. "Target the interference patterns, rebuild natural neural pathways, and stabilize the muscle response." One of the specialists hesitated. "Sir, that hasn't been fully tested on a case this advanced." "I know," Peter cut in, then more quietly, "but we don't have time." Because outside that room pressure was building. "Sir," another technician said urgently. "They've stopped trying to breach the system." Peter's eyes narrowed. "That's not a good sign." "Then, they've filed a legal injunction." Eva looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" Peter exhaled slowly. "It means they're trying to shut this down, officially." Her heart dropped. "No, they can't. They don't even." "They don't need to," Peter said. "They just need enough influence." Silence, then anger. Real anger. For the first time since this started. Eva stood up, her voice shaking but strong. "They hurt my son, and now they want to stop you from helping him." Peter looked at her, and nodded once. Yes. That was all it took. Something inside Eva shifted. Fear turned into something else. "Then don't stop," she said. Her voice steady now. "Please, don't stop." Peter held her gaze for a moment. Then gave a small nod. "I won't." The procedure began immediately. No delays, no waiting. Because every second mattered. Hours passed. The kind of hours that stretch endlessly, where every small sound feels amplified. Every movement feels too slow. Eva sitting just outside the room now, unable to watch but unable to leave. Her hands clasped tightly as she whispered prayers she hadn't said in years. Peter stayed inside the entire time. Focused. Precise. Unwavering. Because this wasn't just another case. This was personal now. Then finally, the doors opened. Eva shot to her feet, her heart racing. Peter stepped out, his face unreadable. And for a second the world stopped. "Well?" she asked, her voice barely holding. Peter looked at her. Then said the words she didn't dare hope for. It worked. She didn't move, didn't breathe. What? What do you mean?" Peter stepped closer. "His system is stabilizing, the interference is gone, his body is responding naturally again." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Can I see him?" Peter smiled slightly. "Yes." Eva walked into the room slowly. Afraid, hopeful, terrified to believe it, Lucas was sitting up. On his own, no tension, no stiffness, just sitting. Like it was normal. "Mom," he said softly. She broke, completely. Running to him, wrapping her arms around him as tears poured uncontrollably, her entire body shaking as she held him tighter than she ever had before. You're okay, she kept repeating. Lucas hugged her back. And then he did something he had never done before. He stood up. Eva froze, her hands still on him, eyes wide. "Lucas," he took one step, then another, slow, careful. But steady, no pain, no hesitation, just movement, real movement. Eva dropped to her knees, crying harder than she ever had in her life, her hands covering her face as the reality hit her all at once. After years of pain, years of confusion, years of helplessness, her son was finally free. Peter stood at the doorway, watching quietly, not interrupting, because this moment wasn't his to take. 3 days later the story broke. A video, simple, unedited, Lucas walking across the room, Eva crying in the background. Peter standing silently to the side. It spread faster than anyone expected. Millions of views in hours, because people felt it, not just saw it. Then came the exposure, the company, the illegal trials, the hidden data, everything. Peter didn't just fix Lucas, he exposed them, and this time they couldn't hide. A week later, Eva stood outside the same facility, Lucas beside her, holding her hand, strong, healthy, free. She turned to Peter, tears still in her eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you." Peter shook his head. "You don't have to." But she stepped closer, voice breaking, "You gave me my son back." He looked at Lucas, then back at her, and said quietly, "No, he never lost himself, he just needed someone to ask the right question." Lucas looked up at him, smiled, "Like you did." Peter smiled back slightly. "Yeah, like that." And as they stood there, something bigger than all of them settled into that moment, not just a miracle, but a reminder that sometimes everything changes because one person chooses to pay attention. If you made it this far, you already know this wasn't just a story, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because stories like this don't come around often, and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from?